but get started so we try to stay on schedule because we have posted this on the internet and there may be other people that might want to turn the system on. You have ready to record?
It's already being recorded, I think.
Oh. All right. Well, good morning to everybody. I'm Cody Vest, the Executive Director for Private Protective Services, and I'm going to call to order this committee meeting for the certified trainers. We'll call it to order. The first thing that we need to do is have our staff attorney, Jesse Gentry, read the statement of necessity.
All right, good morning. This is the regularly scheduled meeting for the Tennessee Private Protective Services Program Committee, which is taking place via video conferencing, pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16 and extended by Executive Orders number 65 and 78. Meeting remotely is considered a reasonable measure to protect the safety and welfare of Tennesseans, while ensuring government business may continue in a manner that is open and accessible to the public. All votes by the committee will be by roll call. Notice of the meeting date, time, location, and agenda has been noticed on the program's website since March 11th, 2021, not 2011, pursuant to TCA annotated section 8-44-108B2. If a physical quorum is not present at the physical location of a meeting of a governing body, and in order for a quorum of members of the governing body to participate in the meeting by remote means, it may be acceptable if a necessity exists and a statement of necessity is read into the record. The determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances for which it is based. A necessity is determined by matters to be determined by the governing body. If they require timely action, a physical quorum is not practical within the time requiring action, and that participation of a quorum of the members by electronic means is necessary. Based on the COVID-19 pandemic, a necessity exists that requires meeting by remote means. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the meeting agenda, which was previously posted to the program's website, and voting will be done by roll call. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. We'll go right now to the roll call. Curtis Brown.
Here.
Dustin Madison. Jack Bird. Leroy Ferris.
Here.
Frank Gaddis.
Here.
Blaze Lane.
Here.
Angel Rodriguez.
Here.
Donald Gregory.
Here.
January Farrell.
She's there.
I see you. Miss Farrell, I think you're on mute. Nope. Still not able to hear you.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, there you go. I got you.
We got you.
Okay.
Okay,
Good deal.
so I'm going to call your name again. January Farrell.
Here.
All right. Frankie Lax. All right. These members may come in later, but I do show that members are here except for Dustin Madison, Jack Bird, and Frankie Lax. All right. I'm going to call for a motion to approve and adopt our agenda. Who would like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve and adopt the agenda.
Who is that?
Second it.
Ferris.
And I second
Ferris.
it.
Who's second?
Curtis.
Brown. Okay. Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Ferris and second by Mr. Brown. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Not hearing any opposed, motion carries. All right, next we need to get a motion to adopt our minutes. Everybody had an opportunity to look those over. And are there any corrections that anybody wants to make to those minutes?
None.
None.
All right. All right. I need a motion and a second to adopt the minutes.
I'll put a motion.
You need to tell me your names. I can't see.
Blaze, motions.
All right.
Curtis Brown, second.
Okay. Blaze Lane and made a motion. And it was seconded by Curtis Brown to adopt the minutes. All in favor? And
Aye.
I'm sorry, I did that incorrectly. I need to do a roll call on this. Curtis Brown,
Aye.
Leroy Ferris,
Aye.
Frank Gaddis,
Aye.
Blaze Lane,
Aye.
Angel Rodriguez,
Aye.
Donald Gregory,
Aye.
January Farrell.
Aye.
Okay. The next thing on our agenda is discussion of the new training curriculum, and I'm going to turn this over to Jeff.
All right, good morning, everybody. Again, glad to see each one that's present this morning. I have received some training updates from a couple, actually about 3 committee members. I did not get a chance to look at the ones that I got yesterday. I was working on another one. So does anybody have anything on the 4 hours of general guard that you want to bring up for discussion at this time? Like I said, I still want to go over. I've asked each one of you to be open and honest and as detailed as possible, and I invite that. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you have a view that's something different. I do try to take each one of your comments and address the reason behind that, if there is a reason. Sometimes there's a particular reason. I try to let you know what that is, and other times it may just be the way I put it up there to start with. But I want to remind everybody that nothing is etched in stone yet, and this is an opportunity for us to come together and make exactly what we want and what we need it to say and what we need it to be. If something is not stated the way you think it should be, we need to work as a committee to figure out the best, just like we did with that one question about where the authority comes from. We sort of discussed that, and I have a pretty good idea of how we can word that to get that point across now. So I don't think we'll need to do that with every slide in the presentation. A lot of those slides I'm going to remove. They were part of that original, I guess, was a selling point to sort of sell the idea of the program. I think we've succeeded with that. So now we need to move forward with exactly how we want it to appear. So I think I saw Mr. Lax. He popped in and popped out. So does anybody have anything in particular right at this moment?
Mr. Winfrey,
Yes.
Angel Rodriguez.
Yes.
We've been in a lot of communication throughout, and if I could bother the committee to go over a few items that some of them are pretty basic things that I thought should be looked at. Number one, I would recommend that we reformat the presentation to be a 16:9 widescreen instead of a 4:3 standard, which it is right now. That allows for more content on each of the slides, and it also is better for classroom display, because if you ever been to a training session and they had the black bars on the side or at the top, that's the reason for that. So that would be my number one recommendation, is to change the format. I would also ask the committee to consider accommodating visual learners. We should use a more standard font throughout the entire presentation. Calibri and Arial are the 2 most common standard fonts. Try to stick to a font throughout the presentation. If we use a 20 font on each one of the slides, that's again better for classroom presentations, so that folks in the back of the classroom can read. Some of these legalese things can go over into different slides, and there's a few of them there that I thought was way too small for a classroom environment. So if we could agree to a font size and style, I think that would help. As you alluded to earlier, when I did a slide-by-slide analysis, there's 339 total slides in the current presentation. I went through slide by slide with a few of my colleagues, and we had recommended to remove approximately 166 of them that did not apply to the unarmed guard portion, either because it was armed security personnel or it applied to certified trainers or LEOs or other things that were just in there for the purpose of this committee. If we were to reformat the presentation to 16:9, use a standard font throughout, on average, 60 slides is going to equal about 30 minutes of content. So I think one of the goals of the committee should be to create 480 slides of content, which would give us 4 hours. That 4 hours wouldn't include any of the classroom time that you'd use for signing in, processing paperwork, breaks, testings, or war stories, things like that, to get the point across. I also think we should consider having learning objectives for each one of the sections, and those learning objectives should be the framework that we use to create the test. When you're considering those learning objectives, what's the student really should learn from this section that we're teaching? What's the most important thing we want them to take away from that? That should be the questions for the test. And as far as the content goes, I've always looked at it from a point of view of consider what would happen if there was an incident that involved a security officer where a trainer was in a court of law. Did the trainer teach it? Is there evidence of that in the curriculum? And did the student learn it? And was it tested on? I think that's something that the committee should also consider when we approach what content should be in here. Lastly, one of the things that I feel pretty strongly about, and I also put out there to the committee, is I think 100 questions for a 4-hour class is a little excessive. I think we should reduce that to 50 and consider 50 on the unarmed portion and 50 on the armed portion as well. So I'll just leave it at that. I got a lot of talking to do, I guess, because I wasn't on the last meeting, and I apologize for that. But I did do a pretty deep dive into all of these things, and I'd be happy to discuss the committee, whatever questions you may have.
I sent an email yesterday. I was a little late to Winfrey, and mine was pretty short, but I'm a task condition standard type person, and I felt like we needed to have learning objectives at the end of this block of instruction the student would be able to do, or for demonstration purposes, for some type of practical exercise here to what that would mean. And it's kind of, I hadn't talked to you, Mr. Rodriguez, but I recommended also that we do a 50 question test for the arm. So I agree. I think as far as the PowerPoint, I think we would be able to change that to our own need as far as the type of the screen display. But I think that's great if it is standard to start with, because I think most people use that. That's my brief comments.
Okay, let me step in for just a moment. I think we just had Frankie Lax join us. So let the record show that he is with us this morning.
Yes, and thank you, Angel, for that. And Angel was the first person to send me. I asked him to look through this, and he looked through it very in depth. And now Mr. Lane has come along and done something very similar. And I've not had a chance to look at Mr. Ferris's comments. I got those yesterday, and I just haven't had a chance to get to them. I was actually looking at Mr. Lane's, but so all the things that Mr. Rodriguez just mentioned, those will be things that will easily be done. We can change the font size. I've considered. I mean, if we need to talk about a law, if we need to talk about the whole thing and it's long, then we will obviously have to have more than one slide to get it all up there. If we can talk about just a portion of a law, and it's okay to do that, then we can just maybe put that portion up there and talk about that. So we can go in and make those kinds of edits. Since we met, I attended one of the things that we do for our individual performance plan here is we have to go through
When is the next meeting?
courses, and so I just recently took one about instructional design for the adult learner, and I'm telling you that thing, I took 11 pages of notes, and then I went back and retyped them and used some of the, I mean, it is great stuff, and it talks about the visual learner, the audible learner. It talks about the learner that needs to be moving and doing something during class. And uh, Blaze mentioned something about death by PowerPoint, and I know that that's something that I hear when I teach in the university setting. Sometimes PowerPoints can get very long, and I'll be honest, when you're talking about biochemistry, it's very hard to speak with an excited voice about a molecule. It's just hard to get people to get excited about that. So you almost have to bring in some things that they can feel and touch and move and manipulate. So, but then we also have to think about a presentation that we can distribute across the state to all the trainers so that they will have access to the same materials. So we need to keep that in mind as we go forward as well. It's going to be easier to do a PowerPoint presentation and just push it out there and say, okay, everybody, this is what we're going to use. But I'm all for any supplemental things that we can also put out there and make available to everyone. I mean, we do live in the age of, I mean, they landed a rover on Mars and flew a drone around remote control. So surely we can get documents out to people across the state. If we start teaching this on Mars, we may have to come up with a different plan. But I think we can handle everything, here on our planet with the technology that we have today. So so while with those things in mind, I think Jesse, our attorney, had a question this morning, and I just want to mention this right now, and I don't think we're probably prepared to talk about this in depth. So this is one thing I'm going to give you this as a homework assignment. When you look at TCA 62-135 or 6235-130 A2 and A6, where it talks about the dishonorable and unethical behaviors and actions. Be looking at that if that's something that, I mean, if some of you have looked at that and you have something that you want to share about it, we certainly can take it up here. If not, then we probably should talk about that in the next meeting. That's something that we want to consider going forward. And he threw out some words there this morning, and just in a brief conversation that we had, what's considered dishonorable or unethical. Well, we may need to follow up with some definitions or some clarification in the rules. If back when I used to be in law enforcement, we all wish we had a general failure to do right law. Well, there is no such thing out there. So you've got to take your existing laws and you've got to investigate and try to figure out if somebody really is violating, and then maybe you can write them a ticket, maybe not. The point is, if it's not on the books, then it's not a piece that you can really enforce. So what we want to make sure is, do we want to teach certain things? And if we do, we probably need to look at a good definition and then a good supporting curriculum that will help us to get that point across. So does anybody have any thoughts on that particular topic at this moment? If so, we'll discuss briefly. If not, that's something I want you to put on your homework or your to-do list, and we can discuss that at our next meeting.
If I just jump in real fast too, Jeff, I know when we discussed it, when I was looking at the PowerPoints, it was kind of a 2-slide or 3 slides that showed the statute for misconduct and some of the grounds that we look at when we're disciplining a licensee. In some ways, that definition or that ground for misconduct is a little bit vague. So I was wondering, what are you all doing as trainers? Are you all teaching about, what is fraud, what is misconduct, or what is misrepresentation? If we look at that first ground, but then under that second one, under A6, what is unethical conduct? What is unprofessional conduct that's going to harm the public? Just by some ways of examples of complaints that we've received with the program, we've had cases where guards are using racial slurs, cases where armed guards are threatening to shoot individuals, cases where guards are not showing up for work or sleeping on the job. When I'm looking at this as an attorney and we're discussing this with the assistant commissioner and the commissioner, there's some things that you look at and you say, okay, well, is this unprofessional conduct? Is it likely to harm the public? That's what the statute says. Some of it, you see it, you know it, but some of it you look at and you think, well, maybe I think this is unprofessional, but the guard is saying, well, I didn't mean that, or I didn't say that. So when we're looking at some of those grounds, it's pretty broad. So I was mainly wondering, what are we teaching across the state? First of all, are we teaching across the state these types of behaviors that you could be subject to discipline, not only by your employer? Obviously, you have an employment contract, probably an employee handbook, so you've got areas there. But if you're, licensed, if you're unlicensed, it's a different issue. But if you're licensed, you could be subject to discipline from the state for some of those same behaviors. So it could be a situation where we include it in this training. It could also be a situation where we clarify, as Jeff stated, in our regulations and our rules, making maybe a more specific definition to outline some of these things as well. Because, something that we have when we have hearings in front of judges, this guard might say, well, I don't think this was unethical. And we're saying as the state, this is unethical. It's something that could be helpful is, what are our trainers teaching? What are our regulations or our rules being updated to reflect? So we don't have to have a full discussion on that, but I do think that's something, and that may be multiple slides. That may be something that we really need to dive into. But I would like maybe just some thought, and maybe if it's something that you all aren't interested in, that's your prerogative. But I think that's something that I'm seeing on the discipline side by the state that we probably could teach more clearly.
Mr. Gentry, I'd like to speak to that for just a moment. In the context of this Angel Rodriguez, sorry. In the context of that particular statute, I believe it regards the disciplinary powers of the commissioner. And in my teachings, basically, I try to, as if a security officer were interacting with a state inspector, that they're not going to lie to a state inspector about any aspects of their employment or their licensure when they get inspected. That's basically how I teach it in the class, because it does include defraud or that section. To my recollection, just I'm not looking at it right now, but at the very end, it goes to the $2,000 fine per statute violation. And I use that in the context of a security officer being inspected by a state inspector on the post.
Great, thank you.
And that sort of reminds me of the little story I told last time about when I worked with the Hunter Ed program. As years went by, we began to clear up some initial issues that, well, we started out, people were mistaking each other for game and shooting each other. Well, after a lot of years of hunter education, that changed. But then they started getting hurt on ATVs or in boats or falling out of tree stands. So we changed our curriculum to address those issues. I think we should be able to do that same thing if we all of a sudden see that we have a lot of complaints coming in, and we go back and realize, man, we're not teaching that. Then we can change our curriculum and to reflect that. And it could only be a handful of slides. It wouldn't, we didn't dismantle the entire program when we saw that we needed to change something. We just shifted the emphasis from one particular aspect to the aspect that we were experiencing trouble and issues with. So I think we can easily do that with this same program. We just need to make sure we set it up so that we have that ability and have that latitude and have those terms defined. As Mr. Rodriguez just stated, he teaches this from the standpoint of if you have a state inspector come in there, but the same thing applies. The statute does mention if you're defrauding or harming the public. So that may include the state inspector, but that includes the guy walking down the street, the lady walking down the street. That includes the child who wanders in out of the rain. So we just need to make sure that, and I think we do need to look at our complaint system. And if we're getting complaints, our goal should be to stop those complaints. Our goal should be 100% no complaints from anybody for any reason. I realize we're going to have those, but it's still nice to have a goal that we don't have any of that. And the way we would attack that would be to educate. So I think that's a good point. So again, all the rest of you on the committee, if that's not something that you've thought about, let's keep that on our to-do list and look at that again at least at the next meeting. And if we don't have slides that address that properly, then we can change one or two or add or tweak one to make it show what we want it to there. So there's been 2 comments now about the number of test questions. And that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we discuss today, because I'm beginning to hear some ideas about that. And Blaze had some ideas about that.
Well, Jeff, I believe the exam that we have, is it 50 questions now?
Well, what I created was 100, but and 100 can, I mean, that it can be. And one thing I didn't think of, and I don't remember if, I think it may have been Angel Rodriguez was talking about, it was either he or Blaze, and y'all can correct me if I get this wrong, but there was mention about people who English is not their primary language. And so if you've got if you struggle with the language, 5 questions in Spanish, I could read them, but I don't necessarily know I took 2 years of that in school, but I don't remember. I know how to read it, but I may not know what the words mean. So 2 or 3 or 5 questions in another language would be devastating to me. So I can certainly appreciate that.
So let's ask our attorney here. Would we not be able to give these individuals an oral exam? As it's written right now, can we give oral exams?
I'll have to double check on that just to make sure and do a little bit more diving into that. That's something though that I know we have different, even if it has to be written, we may be able to do a translated one, but let me look at the statutes and the rules to see, just to confirm.
And that, again, we've talked about this a little bit before. It currently says in our rule that it must be written. So then that question comes out, well, what exactly is written? If you send me a test and I take it on this computer, 30 years ago, I wouldn't have been doing that because I wouldn't have had this computer, for one thing. So written 30 years ago, when these rules were written, was it's on a piece of paper, and I've got a pen and I'm writing everything on that piece of paper. Well, to me, a written test is still written if I'm taking it on the computer, but that's something we need to define. That way nobody has that question. If we say it has to be written and written includes a computer test, then, I would think if you sat somewhere across the table from somebody and read the test to them and you answered the questions for them, to me, that's an oral exam. And I've had those
I
as
agree.
well.
I think it would have to be more of a situation where either it's written in another language, we have a translated copy of the exam, whether that's online or on a piece of paper. I'm not as concerned with that. I think that an online test could be considered written, but I agree. I think if it's a situation where you have someone reading the test to them, that may be more of an issue as to whether or not that could be considered a written test at that point. But if you're still answering it, if you're still, if you have a test in front of you, this is where it's going to be a weird issue. You have a written test in front of you, and I'm reading it to you, so I'm reading it in Spanish, and you're answering it then by circling, the corresponding letters. That's more of an oral test, even though it's on a written document at that point. But that's something that we could look at. I think you're right though, Jeff, that the biggest thing would be updating that rule so we could have a more inclusive way to administer these tests.
We have a lot of illiterate people in the state of Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
When I taught a lot of handgun permit classes, I contacted the state, and they said that we could do verbal and read the test and answer the question. So I know that's different with security. Right. I think that needs to be taken under consideration, that we do have a lot of illiterate people in Tennessee. It's very unfortunate. Mm-hmm. And so from time to time, we do have to explain questions verbally when we're training people.
Right.
Now, this is Blaze. If I may say a couple things. One, just to create or just to point out one significant difference between the handgun carry class and an armed guard class is for the handgun carry permit, the state allows the oral test, and I'm perfectly fine with that because at the end of the day, they're exercising a Second Amendment right. However, as an armed guard class, this is not a right. This is you taking a professional job where you are going to get money for your ability to perform said job. So for that,
I understand that. I was just using that as an example.
Absolutely. And that along with, I just say, because I also teach the handgun class, and it is quite a burden on the instructor in order to give that oral exam, especially when you have 20, 30 other people in the room with you. So let's just make sure we're on the back end thinking of the instructor and the burden on him trying to deliver an oral exam. But as far as the questions go, I think we're all trying to come up with what is a good number and how we administer it. I certainly believe that the computer-based questions can certainly be manipulated to be considered a written exam just by the nature of it. But we also have to understand how are we going to word the questions, because 50 questions worded very on a high education level is going to take you a long time. And like you said, Mr. Lax, there's quite a bit of illiterate people in Tennessee. So are we wording the questions in such a simplistic manner that 100 questions would be able to be knocked out in a timely manner? Because this all has to be done, in a day. And if people are spending 2 hours to take a test, I already have a 50 question test that I administer, and some people take, not everyone, but some people take an hour and 20 minutes just for my 50 question test.
I'll completely agree with Blaine on that as well. I struggle with it the same way he is. 50 question test. I've been upwards of an hour to an hour and 15 minutes waiting on that one guy that everyone's given the laser eyes to when are you going to get done? Just because some people, to second what Mr. Lack said as well, not only are they illiterate, but there's other folks that are really smart people that are just not really good test takers.
That's
And
right.
I think that 100 questions, and again, I'll go back to maybe we think about out of the 100 questions, if we removed, uh, I guess, if what I was looking at, removing 166 of the 339 slides, how many of those questions were derived from the 166 that really wouldn't apply to this training session? I also like to teach in fours, kind of the same way that I golf, which is, did you teach it? Did they see it? Did they write it down, and did they get tested on it? If we're doing all of those things, 50 questions, I think, is going to dilute what 100 questions is really going to dilute from what we really want them to take away as the most important aspects from this class. When you spread it out over 100, if I can get them to learn 10 things from the class, I'm pretty happy. That's where I'm at. And 100 is really just going to dilute it even more. So that's my thought.
Okay. I think can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing is that our consensus is going to be that we want to stay with 50 test questions. Is this something we want to take? I can take a roll call on. We would have this completed.
If I may also throw one last thing
Okay,
into
Blaze.
sticking with the 50 questions, I also believe that having a test A and a test B is a little bit burdensome, probably not going to deliver the results as far as deterring cheating as you would think it would. So keeping everything simplified to a one unified test with 50 questions, I'd be willing to put a motion towards that.
I second Blaze's motion on that as well, because I wouldn't mind having a randomized second test that is exactly the same as the first one. That in the first test, question is number one, but like Blaze said, that is really not doing anything to change the test. It's just really putting another burden on the instructor that's unnecessary.
Okay, so I believe what I've heard then is we have a motion by Blaze to keep the exam at 50 questions, and it has been seconded by Andrew Rodriguez. So we'll do a roll call vote. How about Curtis Brown?
I agree.
Leroy Ferris?
I agree that it should change.
No, wait, it's
I'm sorry.
already 50 questions.
Okay, got it. All right.
Well, the statute,
It
the
says,
rule right now says 25.
oh, 25, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're talking about 50. So you agree to make it 50?
Yes.
Mr. Ferris, all right. Frank Gaddis,
50 is fine.
Blaze Lane,
50 is fine.
Angel Rodriguez,
50's fine.
Donald Gregory,
You're muted, Don. Try it again.
Donald, we still don't have, but you agree. Well, I'm sorry, but I gotta have, you gotta do this by voice vote.
There we go. Yes.
There, thank you, thank you.
Not behind the keyboard.
All right, January Ferris
50's fine.
and Frankie Lax.
Yes.
All right,
All right.
motion carries that the exam will be 50 questions. Now, I didn't have any problems with A and B. If you want to give the same exam, but couldn't you move the questions around a little? The number one might be number 6 if it's still the same exam.
You can do that, but when we talk about doing this for a statewide thing, it's gonna get a lot more complicated. If I send
Okay, all
Angel,
That's
if I
no
send
problem.
Angel a bunch of test A's, but I send him the key for the test B's by mistake, then that's
Well,
just one complication that I can think of right off the bat. But
okay, another thing I think we were talking about as well. It sounds like we're And I didn't realize this was a problem because I've never had a trainer say anything to me about this. But when we do this, rewrite this exam, we're going to have to put it in different language.
I really don't agree with that, Ms. Vest. I think
Okay.
one of the requirements of them being a security officer in the state of Tennessee, for most companies, they're going to have to be able to speak, read, and write the English language in order to
I
do
don't
that
believe we're
job.
going to get that passed, Mr. Rodriguez. I think we're going to have to turn to our attorney. And PSI gives the exams in different languages. I know cosmetology gives it in different languages. Are we going to be able to tell the public, no, you don't speak English, so therefore you cannot take this exam? I think that might be a problem. That's Jesse.
Yeah, we've got some federal requirements for making
Mhm.
certain accommodations. So it would be likely that we would have to be able to provide in several languages. But if PSI is PSI doing the translations?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I know they got the exams, but I don't know how they're administering those.
Okay, and that was my only question is regarding that. Sometimes in different industries, there's certain terms of art that are not translated.
Mhm.
If you translate it word for word, it may not have the exact same meaning. So that may be something where we would have to look at talking with PSI and having some individuals who are bilingual to be able to assist with that.
Well, I know if we get someone that comes in the office here or downstairs and they do not speak English, we have a chart where they point out which language they
Right.
can speak, and then I get an interpreter. But I have to be available for them to be able to talk with us, whether it's through me or interpreter. So we need to be conscious of that.
Cody, what I've run
Mhm.
into several times is we have people to come in to train. They're bilingual. They understand Spanish and English, but when it comes to reading, they only can read. They cannot read English, and so we have that over in West Tennessee a lot. So they can speak fluent English, but they can't read it, comprehend
yeah.
it. So
But that's where I was going with the oral exam.
so we do have an interpreter here on staff
Okay, good.
that we're able to do the verbal, explain the question and read the question stuff. So
Okay, we'll leave that. Jesse and I will get and do some more research on that then to make sure.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I think we'll have to look at how the exams administered to discuss that, who would be translating. But then too, it could be a situation where maybe it's easier to change. Well, not easier. It's going to be time consuming, but maybe it's a better decision to change the rule from being written to maybe be able to provide those accommodations. Maybe open that up a little bit to be either a written exam or, if necessary, an oral exam. That way we can have a situation where we can make sure we're making those appropriate federal accommodations. It does become a strange issue. I think, Angel, maybe you had brought it up with an employer who wants someone who can read and write. That would be a slightly different issue, with a private employer saying that this is how we, what we want, the qualifications we want in our employees. However, if we're looking at doing a state examination that's consistent from the state, then we would have to comply with certain federal guidelines with that. So that's the only difference there with that.
This is Blaze. One thing to consider that I just want to throw out there, and understand we have to comply with federal guidelines. But Cody, you had mentioned cosmetology offers their exams in multiple languages, and how are we going to tell the public that we don't? And I certainly agree with that up into the unarmed guard portion. But as we move forward, which we inevitably will, to the armed guard portion, we're going to have to say, hey, when a person can no longer take an exam because they can't read the language, but we are offering a PowerPoint presentation, which is also primarily written in English, and we are going to send them out into the public with a firearm and guarantee that they hopefully learn something. I just think that might be an interesting situation we also have to consider.
Yeah, so I see we have some discussion in this area. So let's put it on our radar if you don't mind, Jeff, for the next meeting. Give Jesse and I time to look into this a little bit further, give you some more information. We just have to be cognizant to the different people that we have out there that we need to. Hold on, yeah. Can you get it? Somebody, is that? Oh, hold on, just a second. I got another. All right,
It's
there we go.
downstairs.
I'm sorry. The cashier's office rings on my phone when somebody's downstairs for me to go see. So I've lost my train of thought there. But okay.
All right,
Yeah,
so I've written that down, that we'll have more
Okay.
discussion about the languages. And I know, back again, drawing from my experience with TWRA, we did provide interpreters where necessary for the hunter education exam. And that's been well over 10 years ago that we were doing that. So that might be something that and like you were saying, it's very difficult to interpret a foreign language word for word. You almost can't do that. And because if you do, that language translated into your language word for word may look like gibberish, because like in Spanish, you describe things before you tell what they are. And so it's very difficult task to translate things exactly.
All right. We got it on our radar for our next meeting then. Thank you.
So I think that that's probably the best plan of action, is maybe we come up with a couple different ways looking at the statute or looking at the regulation as to how to change it to, one, comply with Title VI, because that's a federal requirement, making certain accommodations. But then two, how do we do it? Because Blaze, I think that's a great point, though, if we're saying here's a PowerPoint and we're presenting it in English, but then all of a sudden the test we know is going to be administered potentially in a different language. There is a disconnect there. So I think maybe we'll have to come up with a couple different avenues and explore those and put those to a committee vote.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so let's at this point let's back up, because we're getting pretty close to the end of kind of where I felt like we need to be for this particular meeting. And let's back up a little bit. Did everybody get I sent everybody out a copy of a 1-page training form and I sent another one yesterday, I think. Everybody got that?
Okay, it looks like this.
It's just a 1-page. It's got some check boxes on it. I did go back and make, and I made an edit to this 1 page. And what I did down there at the bottom is I added a place for the assistant trainer to print their name and sign their name if you have an assistant working for you. We have some of those across the state. I see training forms every now and then come in where it has been signed by an assistant trainer. So I had left that off. What's everybody's thought on this?
My thought is, out of the entire thing that we're doing here, this is the thing I am the most pleased with. That getting it down.
Been asking this for a long time, haven't we?
Yes, ma'am.
Long time.
I couldn't be happier with this form, so thank you, sir.
And
second that.
And one of us liked it so well they wanted to start using it, and I had to say no, please don't do that.
No, you cannot use anything until we get it has to have a new form number and it has to go through a forms committee. It won't be anything too fast, but we will do that if we all vote on the using this form. But I wanted to touch on something while we were here, if I may, and that's the assistant trainer. Look at the statute. The assistant trainer only assists you with the training. They do not do the training. They're not actually supposed to be left alone in the room doing the training.
Just an
even though
aid.
That's right. They're just an aid to that. If they need to do something to assist you. But if you have an assistant trainer, you need to make sure you make the application with us. It's very simple because that assistant trainer may be with you 4 or 5 years and decide they want to become a trainer, and we can use that experience, or they can, in order to become a trainer. But they cannot sign the form. There's a place for their name, but they cannot sign the official form as the trainer. That must be you that does that. I just wanted to touch up on that because I have quite a few people that call me and go, well, I was his trainer for 5 years. Well, I'm sorry, but you're not on his license. Excuse me, his certification. So therefore, I don't know what you did. So if you have a assistant that you want to get certified, which you should have, any assistant should come through our office and get the certification.
We can put up to 3 on your, there's a place in core that we can have 3 different individuals named on your certification labeled as an assistant.
But that's
And
only in our computer system now. If you need 6, well, you probably, I don't think there's anything in the rule that says you couldn't have as many as you want to. It's just that we're limited to where it would show up on your section, but we would still put a note in your file that whoever is your assistant trainer. But you have to make the application. I didn't mean to interrupt on that. Hey, like I said, Jeff said, does everybody had an opportunity to look over this, go over this training form, and maybe we can go
Okay.
ahead and vote on it while we're doing
right.
this. But let's go over it a little bit.
So the one thing I want to make sure is that I've not missed anything. I mean, I've told y'all before, when I do something, and I'm a terrible editor of my own work because I just think it's right because I did it and it says what I wanted it to say. But let's just make sure that I haven't missed anything. So we can just start up here at the top. So
I can't
if
even
you're
keep my
if you're
glasses
teaching a class, whatever that class is, it's either going to be for an unarmed guard, so that'd be the 4 hours of general training. It may be an armed guard, that'd be all 16 hours. It may be an armed renewal, so that's 4 hours of classroom review and qualification. You could be adding a weapon, or you could be changing the weapon. Is there any other training for any other reason besides those?
Well, what is the difference between adding and changing?
Nothing.
Well,
I'm just throwing that out. I mean, it's
to me, the difference is if you work for, let's say you work for Walden Security, they use Berettas. And then all of a sudden you decide to go to work for G4S and they use Glocks.
that's adding a new weapon. I don't see no. It's no different. Oh, you're the
but
trainers to explain it.
but
I heard
that's-
what you said.
But that's changing a weapon.
To
Why
me, the
wouldn't that be
current
adding a
gun,
weapon? I think we're just using different terminology. If I'm going to go from one gun to the other, I'm adding a weapon. Or you could look at it changing it. Or do we need both? I'm throwing that out.
well, I think the way the statute reads, once they qualify with that particular firearm, it's good for 2 years until the registration expires. So I think it would just be an add. I mean, it would be a change to them, but I would leave it alone because that legally they can carry that gun for the period of that registration. That's just my 2 cents.
I'm going to back Leroy up on that one.
What if that
Wait,
gun
it says-
belongs to another contract security company? They can't carry it then. They got to give it back.
Model caliber, so they could go out and buy another one, exact make, model, caliber, and still be able to carry it.
And their license is good till it expires, or registration is good till it expires. They could work for another company in between. So that's my take on it.
That brings up another question to me. Somewhere down the road, now we have got to have the caliber because that's what our rule uses to determine whether or not you can carry it. It's based on the caliber. But do we think we ever should add a serial number to this because we have a lot of people that say, well, I've qualified with a 9mm. I ought to be able to carry any 9mm in the industry. And that's not, I disagree with that 100%. We need to have the exact weapon that you qualified with, in my opinion, but right now we just look for make, model, and caliber.
So if I may, this is Blaze. When we're talking about make, model, caliber, we're not looking for serial number because a Glock 17 is a Glock 17. That is not to say they can go out and get a Glock 19. That's not it. But if their Glock 17 breaks or if it goes to a different company, what you're asking them to do is not only have to purchase a brand new firearm, but then, which is the exact same gun. The only difference is the serial number. I mean, every Glock 17 is a Glock 17. It doesn't really change in form or function. So then they have to go back and take a 4-hour class all for that as well. I think that's a bit much.
I agree with Mr. Blaze. This is Frankie Lax. I wanted to ask this. What about the non-lethal certification on this form? The non-lethal certification that's in pepper spray and the
It's not on this form,
It's
Frankie,
not on this
because
form.
we don't keep up with this. That's up to the trainer. You as a trainer is going to do, let's say, a chemical spray, whatever that is. You give the individual the certificate, a little card that says that they've been trained. You never send any of that to the state.
I understand that, Ms. Cody. I'm just opening up that for discussion. Should we
Okay.
change that or
Should
not?
we change that? Well, let's go back right now to that weapon, Jesse. The statute doesn't require us to get serial numbers, and I can see a big problem in our office trying to keep up with serial numbers.
Yep.
I agree. I would defer to, the trainers on that because I think what's already been identified is if we're keeping up on this form with what the statute requires, well, actually what the rule requires as well. To add serial numbers, I think we would have to change the rule, and I'm not sure if that's worth.
It would require a rule change.
Right, and that, from what I'm hearing from everyone else, it sounds like it's not something that the trainers would be interested in. So
It also would require a rule change if we put the non-lethals on there because
we don't keep up with it. It's the trainer. Yeah.
The statute specifically tells us that we don't keep up with that. That's the contract security company that hires that person
It's the trainer.
is responsible for keeping those training records, and the guard that carries those devices is responsible to carry a card on their person that says they've been trained with that particular type of non-lethal. And somebody brought up the last time, and this may be something that we want to consider when we do rule changes. In some circles, they've changed the name from non-lethal to less than lethal because you can tase somebody and I think in some cases they can be killed by that. I certainly know you can hit somebody in the head with a baton and kill them, and then but Your Honor, I was using a non-lethal weapon. Well, yeah, but you beat them I mean, you could probably take an owl feather and stick it in somebody's neck and make them bleed to death too. So, just a question that we might want to consider when we get to the point where we're changing words or definitions or things like that. So back to the form.
I'm still confused. Did we change, add a weapon, or keep it, or what did we
we're
do?
going back to that. That's where I'm going right now.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff,
yes.
If I want to offer on the add change weapon, I don't want us to get off into the weeds with it. I think it's a simple addition, which I do like, but we could just leave the checkbox there for add, and then we could just put slash or change weapon, and we just check one box and we're done with it.
Okay, I was about to suggest that, so that would be real easy to do. Just take one of the boxes away and just go add slash change.
Well, okay.
And whether you're adding it or changing it, it would both mean the same thing. Would that work?
I second what Leroy's saying. I agree.
I agree also.
Okay, good.
All right.
We'll go ahead and make that change then.
I agree
All
with
right.
it.
What we decided to do that where it says add a weapon, we're going to go add/change weapon. That way.
So we'll have 4 boxes across
Yeah.
the top. All right. So then we have the applicant's name and last name, first, middle, a place for their social. And now there's a spot here for the registration number, and the only time you would have a number to go there would be if this was a what?
Renewal.
It'd be a renewal. So if automatically when I look up there and I see that armed renewal checked, I know that when I get down here on this next line, I'm going to see their registration number in that box. Okay. So then I would drop down if this is an armed class, then I automatically know that I should see 4 hours of general guard, 8 hours of classroom, and 4 hours of marksmanship. All 3 of those boxes should be checked. And you notice where I put instructor signature, and then I put in there if different. I don't see a reason that we should be, if it's the same instructor, they shouldn't be having to write their name and sign it and their certification number at each of those places. One should be sufficient. And then there is a place though for the date and the score if it happens to be different. I know most people don't do an armed class all in the same day, but sometimes they have the date the same. And the way we would enter that into our system, if you did an armed class on the 16th and the 17th, then we only have ability to put one entry in on core. We would put the 17th for that person. So so we have that, and so you just go on down, and I would make a change here where it says add or change weapon. I would have that same type of box, add/change weapon, and I'd have the one check box there. So I'll make a note of that.
Why are we doing that again?
Well, the instructor's got to have a place to sign. If they just add a weapon in the middle of the year, the instructor's got to sign it. I see these come in the middle of the year where somebody's got a new gun for Christmas and they want to carry it. And if they do that, they got to get a certified trainer to qualify them. And
Yeah, but wait a minute. I'm confused. If I got a new gun for Christmas, I got to go to a trainer, and wouldn't the trainer be filling out some of this top stuff? Or is this just
yeah,
if
they
I get
fill out.
it? Okay, let me ask the trainers. If I buy myself a brand new gun and I come to you, what are you going to do?
The 4
Well,
hours of marksmanship training that's up at the top.
Then
That's
why
right.
am I filling the bottom out again? If I've already put add or change up the top, why do I need to mark the bottom again? Am I looking at that incorrectly?
Where are they going to sign it at?
Well, up here where they did those 4 hours of training or 8 hours or 4 hours of marksmanship. Because if I got a new gun, I got to do it all, right?
Well, maybe on the back end, it might look a little confusing to the folks at Private Protective Services that they see 4 hours of marksmanship training without the other 12. That's just my thought. If I'm looking at it at the back end here.
Okay,
That's exactly the way I'd see it. If you just sent that in, that's all you sent in, I'd be saying, well, where's the rest of the training? And then you say, well, it's a add or change weapon. Well, then I gave you a place to indicate that that's what it's for.
okay, but this is what we're doing. We're trying to tear this sheet apart to make sure it's correct for you and for us as well. That's what we're trying to do. I find that confusing myself, but if that's what everybody says do, that's what we'll do. If we see a problem with the staff and with this, we can always come back and make changes as needed. not written in stone.
Well, I think this is a lot less overburdensome than what we've got.
Yes,
Yes, thank you so much.
yes.
All right, so then the next section, there's a place there for 4 different weapons. And that's just because there was room there to do that. I certainly don't advocate people having 8 or 10 different ones. There are some out there that do that. What would you guys do to me if I came there and I wanted to qualify with 8 different firearms?
Take your money.
That's right,
Take
and
your money
train
and
them.
qualify you. It's right, exactly right.
That's right.
And then what would you do? You would fill out these? If I
Bunch
got
of
8 of them?
paperwork.
I'd fill out 8
Fill out
forms.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
Fill out 2 forms.
But that's why it would cost me $300 to do that, right? Or 4?
No, I mean, seriously, the question is, here I've got a Glock, and you're putting your weapon down, your model, the caliber, and I scored to say 95, whatever. And now I'm going to use I don't know.
A SIG.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so that's the second one over here. But where do you put the marksman? You go up here to the top and mark some other stuff, or the 4 hour? Did you spend 4 hours at the range of 4 hours in the classroom teaching me the Glock and the SIG, or was that done separately?
You're going to have several different students shooting several different firearms. You're not going to teach a 4-hour class to each individual person. So whether they have 2 firearms, once they get to the range, the only difference is that they shoot twice instead of just once. You're teaching everything the same because you're teaching a double action, a striker fire, and in some cases revolvers. So honestly, you're covering all of that in the class. Firearm fundamentals are fundamentals for a reason. So that should answer that question.
Okay, so I'm up here and I took the 4 hours of general, then I took the 8 hours in classroom, I took the 4 hours of marksmanship. I'm coming down here and my Glock and my SIG are covered under all those other classroom hours.
Yes.
Correct.
And your Smith & Wesson revolver and your Ruger LCP is also down there.
Yeah, what about my shotgun?
It'll be one of those 4.
Yeah.
You teach the same thing for a shotgun? You do a handgun?
At that
Shotguns,
point, Cody, gun
shotguns fits
safety is
different
gun safety.
fundamentals. Shotgun would require different fundamentals,
Yes.
separate class entirely.
And that's what we're doing. We're just throwing this out and having discussions about it. And
That
you
would
know,
come in
a
on
shotgun's 12 gauge, period. It's nothing else. What,
Right.
Curtis, I'm
That
sorry.
would come under a different training class, like you said, different fundamentals, and we fill out a different sheet. That would be an extra sheet that we would fill out.
Okay, how about that? Yeah, I agree with that. The shotgun would go on a separate form. I don't know what the rest of you trainers think.
Well, my question would be, would it be impossible to continue to train like you're training currently, but using this sheet instead? You'd still be able to record everything like you need to, right?
I think we
Yeah.
all agree that the form is
It don't make
good
it
to
easier.
use it.
Form
It
is
just,
not the problem. Yeah, the form
No.
is great.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right, so that's what we're discussing is the form. All right, so we got to where you put your weapons in.
All right. So you got room to put at least 4 there, and if the person exceeds 4, then you just got to use a different sheet.
Yes.
All right.
And we see a lot of people coming in with more than 4 weapons. We do.
And clarification on the shotgun, it would just be on that same form as an ad weapon,
Add
correct?
addition, yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay, all right.
And just you're just going to check the 4-hour marksmanship training for the shotgun.
All right. So then that brings us to the part that I added, which was a place for the assistant trainer to print and sign their name. And then this is where your information would go. And there's only room here for 2 trainers. I thought I had room for more than that, but I've got room for 2. I've never seen more than 2. Now a lot of the places I know several in Memphis have an unarmed trainer and an armed trainer. I see a lot from Angel where he will sign as the unarmed trainer, and then Warren Smith or some of those guys will sign as armed. If we just have a place for two trainers here, an armed and an unarmed, is that going to be adequate? I've never seen more than two trainers involved in anything.
I agree with you, Jeffrey. Just two.
Okay.
Okay, so
Ms.
we got
Angel, I agree as well.
assistant trainer signature, print trainer's last name, trainer email. So is that still the assistant? Okay, you
No.
got assistant, then you got okay, here is Shauna, and then the next one, print trainer's name would be me, trainer's address would be me, facility, that's where we went out and on the range or you did your classroom or whatever. Then the trainer's email, and again, okay, so but I would only have to do that one time then.
If you're an armed trainer, then you'd only have to go in there at one place and put your information. And then if Shauna was your assistant and you were an unarmed trainer and I was an armed trainer, then Shauna's name and signature would be up there. Yours would be next, and then I would be down at the next part as an armed trainer. And then there's that part down at the bottom where I don't typically see a lot of people making comments. Sometimes I do. If there are comments that you want to make, you've got 4 lines there to make comments.
Okay, I believe we talked about that the last time. You gonna make a comment that says, I looked at the form and Johnny made 100, but you got down here on this list that I don't think Johnny needs additional training, let's just say. That's your responsibility. If you send me a training form and it's 70, I believe, and if they pass it, we're going to take the form. But this form, you need to understand when we have a shooting or something happens, the first thing that we're going, me anyway, I do the research and I go back to this training form. And there's times that I do call trainers and say, hey, can you give me some other information about Mr. Smith or whoever? Do you have a more current telephone number, more current address? Sometimes we have to come back to you to get this information. This training form could and has on numerous occasions been used in court. So we take it very seriously.
It's one of the first items that is subpoenaed by the prosecution or the defense, either one. They want to call in question the training. Was it done? Was it done correctly? Who did it? So, and that's why sometimes we'll call you and say, hey, this date is not right, and you scratched through it and wrote another date in there. That's why we don't accept that, because if that gets brought up in a courtroom, the defense attorney is surely going to bring that up and say, somebody's altered this form. And so we just would rather that form be neat and clean and as correct as possible up front, so that we just avoid anything that might appear to be could have been fraudulent, or well, who did that? How do we know that Blaze changed that score? It was 78, but looks like it's 98 now, or vice versa. Who changed it? So let's just make sure we do that and make it neat and make it look right. So that's the end of the form. There's no second page. When I get this form, if you train somebody and you give them a copy of this and they apply to be an armed or unarmed guard, they will attach this one sheet to CORE, and you'd be surprised how many people apply for armed guard and we get one sheet of training, either page 1 or page 2, but not both. And they're just as well off if we didn't get anything, because if it's armed, we currently have to have 2 pages, and one without the other one doesn't fly. So
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on the form? Is this something that we want to vote on and say, yes, we're ready to, we're going to accept this form?
Can we vote on
What-
using
what-
it now?
No.
Oh, come on.
No, I just told you it has to go to a forms committee.
I
And
know.
I have to be able to say the committee did vote to have the, you know.
That semi-automatic's rear sight. Well, Cody, I'd just like to say, I think it's a big improvement.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. All right. If you're ready, I need a motion to
A motion.
approve. I'm sorry. Who is that?
Frank Gaddis.
Frank made the motion to
Angel
accept this
second.
form.
Angel second as well.
Angel, and I didn't hear Frank, and then Angel did the second. Motion was made by Frank Gaddis and a second by Angel Rodriguez for the committee to agree to using the new training form. Curtis Brown. You're muted, Mr. Brown.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So your vote is yes?
I voted
Do
yes.
all right. Leroy Ferris,
Yes.
Frank Gaddis,
Yes.
Blaze Lane,
Yes.
Angel Rodriguez,
Yes.
Donald Gregory,
Yes.
January Farrell,
Yes.
and Frankie Lax.
Yes.
Motion carries. We will, whenever we get it approved through the forms committee, we'll let you know. But the motion carries for the new training form. Thank you.
okay, the other thing that I had on my little list here to make sure we talked about today is we created an armed subcommittee at the last.
There are 3 main types of semi-automatic pistol actions with a single action
And
semi-automatic.
hey, we're getting some training here all of a sudden. So where are we good on that? I know Blaze sent out an email and said, hey, let's all make sure we what was that word you used? Collaborate?
Yes, I did send out an email. I think I only got one response, so I don't know if everybody either received it or how you guys wanted to attack it.
Well, let's discuss that real quick. And I think it's important that I mean, I don't think we don't necessarily, obviously you guys need to be working on this stuff maybe on Monday night after you get through doing whatever, or Sunday morning, whatever it is you have time to do what you do. So we need to make sure that we're on some kind of plan and we're working in that direction. So I think Blaze had a good idea that if you create a Google Doc and you have some idea that you think needs to be incorporated, you need to send that out to the committee and make sure that make sure we're all working on the same page, or at least the same ideas and things of that nature. Did we lose Jesse? I was going to ask him.
Oh, Jesse's here, but
Oh, there he is.
I'm going to need to check into this. I've been doing board meetings for years, and I do know that you cannot have 2 that's not unless it's considered a public meeting, 2 or more. That means you cannot even send emails
Right.
to more than one person. So Jesse, I don't know the answer. I've reached out to 2 people, have not heard back yet if committees are considered the same way.
Right, and that's my understanding that with the sunshine laws are that if a governing body is meeting outside of the scope of its public meeting, there are issues. A committee is technically a governing body in some ways, but whether or not it meets that definition is something that our department hasn't given us guidance on yet. So I would hold off on some of that collaboration at this time, and just make sure that we're discussing. I think the best way to do it, so that way we're not holding everything back, would be to assign maybe some different items in the meeting, have people work on those and then bring them to the next meeting. That may be the best way to move
Right.
forward at this time.
And if you're going to send something out like Blaze did, you need to send the email out separately to each person, not as a group email. Yeah. Don't send blind copies. And Jeff's going to need to start doing that too. Make sure when he sends anything out, it's going to have to go to each person individually. Let's step on the side of caution until we know different. If it's all right with the committee. Okay.
Jesse, is it acceptable for them to, if they complete something, go ahead and send it to me and I can start working on assembling or?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But then whenever you disperse it to the committee, it's going to have to be an email individually instead of everybody.
Right.
It's a little bit, that's why I have to do each one of our board members, and it takes a little while. Shauna has to do the same thing when she does minutes or whatever. So we're used to doing that. So I said, let's do that on the side of caution, just to be sure.
All right. So any discussion about about the armed portion that there were 6 of you that agreed to be on that subcommittee to work on the armed part?
Yes,
Or
I
y'all-
just like to say maybe we should have some type of objectives. We have a goal, obviously. And then maybe each person that we choose could work on a particular objective or objectives. And then some way we share that through you, Jeff. That's just an idea, but I think it would be hard for 6 of us to write a lesson plan / PowerPoint, even if we were all together. I think probably each person taking a topic and then we share it with other people to critique and tweak it and make it be maybe what I guess the committee will buy off on. That's just an idea.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so I think probably right now would be a good time for those 6 that agreed to be part of that subcommittee. Let's go ahead and because we need to be doing this. June 30th will be here before we know it.
Okay, those subcommittee, in case you don't remember, was Blaze Lane, Curtis Brown, Dustin Madison, Leroy Ferris, Frankie Lax, and January Farrell. It's your subcommittees members. Okay.
Somebody want to? I want to let you all. I don't want to pick
Could you
one
call-
of you and say you do this, and because you might have something you rather do, or
So
you have a claim to fame or something.
This is Blaze. I'll go ahead and start. And in my ideas to begin with, I was trying to get an idea of where everyone's expertise lied, what your interests lied, and where you thought you could, I guess, contribute. And I know that with my background, I feel very comfortable handling the 4-hour range portion, and I feel extremely comfortable assisting in anywhere else that would be needed.
All right.
How about you, Curtis? How do you? What's your expertise in?
Well, don't get mad at me. I'm an ex-state troop, Tennessee State Trooper, so I'm diverse in military, so I'm diverse in just about anything. So again, I agree with Blade. I'm more comfortable at doing either test level and especially out on the range.
Okay, another range person.
Safety.
All right, thank you. Dustin's not here. What about Leroy Ferris?
Well, I feel comfortable with any part of it. You know, I taught for Toledo teaching instructor development and firearms and all types of other things in the past, but I could take nomenclature. I'm pretty good with graphics and all that. I could take nomenclature. Someone want to agree with that, and the safety part of the presentation or just whatever. I'll take whatever.
Okay, so we just put down all portions. You do the unarmed and the armed. Okay, very good. Thank
Hey,
you.
one thing that we need for this arm part is we need somebody that can work on the laws that we need to make sure we cover, like the Castle Doctrine or whatever laws that are important that we get across to the students. So who is good? Who is or knows a good legal scholar?
Jeff, since I teach, the handgun permit, plus I teach all this, and I'm also the office manager and administrator at my academy. I can take that part.
All right, so we'll let you head up anything to do with Title 39 and 40 that we need to make sure that we cover.
All right, let me finish up. Now, Frankie Lax, what expertise area are we in?
So how did I get put on that committee? So I'm on the main committee, and then I'm on the subcommittee too.
Yes, you
You
volunteered.
I
volunteered at
don't
the last
remember
meeting.
that, huh?
You volunteered at the last meeting.
I think you need to look at your minutes. I don't. I mean, I'll do whatever, but
It was me, not him,
Who's me and not him?
Frank Gaddis.
yeah,
You
Frank,
had me on there.
Really? So,
It was.
Well,
Unless
we
you
had
erased-
six. We had six.
well, we hadn't got to. Yeah, it's Blaze, Curtis, Dustin, Leroy, Frankie, in January. So it's Frank Gaddis. Well, I do apologize. I'm sorry on
Wow.
that,
Kick
Frankie.
me out.
I think Frank's more qualified to do all of that than I am, Mr. Frank.
Oh, okay, so Mr. Gaddis, how about tell us about your area?
I've been teaching as a firearms instructor for 25 plus years, retired law enforcement instructor, NRA instructor, and the list keeps going on. So I can take whatever or dip into whatever needs to be done.
Very good. Thank you very much. And we already heard from January. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I only have 5. Oh, Dustin's not here today. All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's good.
But I will be out all next week, so I won't be able to do anything.
All right.
Okay, so do we need to clarify, to your point, Leroy, do you feel like we need to clarify anything more specific while we're
Yes.
here together?
Yes, I just want to make sure what topics, again, I thought I said maybe nomenclature and safety. If everybody's good with that, somebody wants to take that. But like I say, I feel like I do graphics very well and whatever, but it's whatever.
Let me ask this question. Do you use, I know we used at TWRA, we used a Glock presentation that was immaculate. I mean, it was a kindergartner would understand how that pistol worked if they watched that video. Do you use anything like that?
I do. I have one for Glock, Smith & Wesson M&P, 6 Hour. I have several of the standard guns. I think most of it just needs to be, general semi-automatic pistol has this or that. But I have, I'm an armor for all those companies, and I have lots of stuff that's public that can be shown to the public and not infringe any kind of copyright. I usually alter things like that anyway in a presentation, but it's whatever people think that they want. I'll be happy to add. I just think it needs to be general of how to manipulate and what the general parts, and obviously safety is going to be the same for all of them.
Right, I agree. It does need to be as general as possible. I mean, we only use the Glocks. That's what we issued. So but if you can, yes, if you'll put something like that together, because when I completed that training that I went through last week about the adult learning, I thought about all the things that we've used in the past and then Blaze had made the comment about death by PowerPoint, and I realized that we don't want to stay with just one theme, but we want to keep it manageable so that we can, and it may be that we can put it on our state website, and then you can just go there and download it as a certified trainer anywhere in the state. I don't know exactly how that will roll out right now, but I can see that as we can have it in sections and you can go and download it or whatever. But
that's what Department of Safety did, and that seems to work pretty well.
Okay. All right. And so yeah, if you'll put some things together about the nomenclature and anything that's interactive or kinesthetic, I think is the word they use in that presentation I took. where you've got moving parts and it's actually showing basically how things work, maybe with a semi-automatic in general and a revolver in general, then
Just a quick question for everybody else. In all my classes, I have the student disassemble and reassemble their firearm, and I show them lubrication points and all that type of whatever type firearm they bring. In some places, it is like it's a standard issue thing, like a Glock Model 22. Some of the places I contract with, but I require all students to disassemble, reassemble, and to know the lubrication points of their firearm. I mean, that's something I should add. I'm asking other trainers.
I agree, Leroy.
I agree.
Thank you.
All right.
okay, so do we feel a little bit better about specifically kind of where we need to head now, say in the next couple of weeks, or?
Okay,
Yes,
okay,
no, maybe?
Okay, I'm gonna tell
Yes.
you that the next meeting is scheduled for March the 31st. We are going to have another one out there. That meeting for March the 31st is going to be my meeting. And what I need for you to have ready is your rules. You need to have your laws and your rules. If you don't have that, let us know. We'll send you another copy of it. And we're going to turn to page 1. The rule definition is 0780-05-02-.02 definitions, and we're going to go one at a time. If we're going to make changes, now's the time to make changes in our rules. So we need to go over every one of them. So that's going to be my segment that we're going to do next time. We need to go ahead probably and look at some more dates while we have everybody with us, to see what other some more dates that we can get in here. Do you want to go to your calendars? Okay. Who wants to start off with that? Do you got your calendar? Okay, you got my calendar up. Of course I didn't. Okay. So we know we're going to meet March the 31st. So when are we going to meet in April? Anybody have any suggestions? Need to be pretty quick.
Let's see.
April 7th,
Good, 7. Okay.
good.
Anybody else? April the 7th? What day is that?
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
I'll second that, Blaze.
Curtis Brown. I'm good with the 7th of April.
All right.
I usually have a little bit of a problem with Wednesdays because I teach handgun permit. We're down a couple instructors at the moment. So it's a hit or miss whether I'll be able to make a meeting or not.
Oh, okay. Anybody else have any comments about April the 7th?
This is Gregory. I'm okay with the 7th.
All right, let's look at Wednesday, April the 7th. What's the next one? What date April? We need to,
And what about the
what about
28th
you?
of April?
What's the 28th of April? 28th? Uh-huh.
That's also a Wednesday.
Anybody have problems with April the 28th? Looks like we're sticking with Wednesday there, January.
For January, how about to do it on the 29th then, on that Thursday, so January could be there.
No,
Is
I
that
have
okay?
meetings on the 29th.
What about the
That's
27th?
Oh, 27th.
27th.
That's on a Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
that would be perfect.
All right.
That's
How about
perfect.
anybody else?
I teach an armed guard class that day, so I won't be able to be there.
Who is that?
Frank Gaddis.
Okay. So that's what we're trying to do, find something that's going, okay. What do we have that Monday?
Mondays is good.
Monday the 26th, I'm open. Anybody else?
Monday is always perfect for me because we're actually closed here and I can do these from home.
Yes. 26th is
Yeah.
good for me.
Everybody else good with the 26th?
Good.
It's Gregory. I'm good with 26.
All right, so what we have, we're meeting on March the 31st. We're going to go with April the 7th and April the 26th. Any other input with those? Okay, if not, I'm going to have a motion for that.
Motion to approve.
I second
I
it.
second it.
There's Frankie, and then there's January making a motion. The motion has been made by Frankie Lax and seconded by
January.
January. Yeah. Sorry about that. January Farrell to accept our next meeting dates is April the 7th and April the 26th. All right. Curtis Brown.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Dustin, Leroy Ferris,
Yes.
Frank Gaddis,
Yes.
Blaze Lane,
Yes.
Angel Rodriguez,
Yes.
Donald Gregory. Donald, I think you might be on mute.
Donald, you're on mute. Hey, Donald, he's talking to somebody.
Okay. Frankie Lax.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, the motion carries. We will be meeting March the 31st, April the 7th, and April the 26th.
You got all
And what we have decided, let me make sure I understand this. We all voted to have a 50 question exam.
Yes.
And then we all voted to accept the new training form, if I can get it through the training committee, forms committee, excuse me, that Jeff made. So those are the two, and we voted on the new dates. All right. We're getting something accomplished here, folks. May not seem like it, but we've been working on this so long, so many years to try to get some of this done. This is great. Okay, Jeff, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Didn't mean to
Okay.
interrupt you.
That's pretty much exhaust everything that I've made notes on that I wanted to make sure that we covered today. So I will continue to look at the comments and revisions that you have sent me on the 4 hours of general training, and I will begin to try to go through that and reassemble that. One of the things that I want to do, those of you that are familiar with the NRA training, every slide is referenced, and I basically want to do this for, I would like to have an instructor, I don't know what really to call it, maybe an instructor manual or an instructor guide to go with this training, and maybe have notes and things like that. I think what I tried to do when I first created that is I'd put in a slide, and then I'd have a slide that had some notes. Well, Angel would say, well, that's a duplication of that slide. So what I'd like to be able to do is create a sort of an instructor guide that goes with that, because those notes are important. They're like, for example, if we have an attorney general opinion that says it's okay for an armed guard to go down the street and eat lunch in his uniform with his gun on, and then return back to his post, that needs to be discussed. I mean, when you're teaching armed guards what they can or should and should not do, that needs to be discussed. So if you don't put it in the PowerPoint presentation, it needs to be in the instructor guide. Do y'all kind of agree with that? You see where I'm going with that?
Mr. Winfrey, if I would too, in the PowerPoint presentation at the very bottom on each slide, you can add notes, which would be visible to the instructor. That's just something to avoid the duplication of slides throughout the presentation. Just an idea.
Good.
Okay. And probably I should just yield this whole thing over maybe to him, but I don't want to do that unless he twists my arm and insists. But at any rate, so again, I want to remind all of you that everything we have right now is a work in progress, and nothing has been etched in stone yet. So we want this, when we get through with this, we want it to be, I mean, our goal is that it be perfect. I know it won't be. Nothing is perfect, but there's nothing wrong with having a goal that says that. And we'll get as close to that as possible. And that's really where we want to go. And I think we're headed in the right direction. And I appreciate everything that y'all are doing. And I think that's pretty much all I have.
Well, okay, if we don't have any other discussion, I'll ask for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Mr. Lax, all
Frank
right.
Gaddis will second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn, and we'll go down the roll call. Curtis Brown,
I concur.
Leroy Ferris,
Yay.
Frank Gaddis,
Yay.
excuse me, Blaze Lane,
Yay.
Angel Rodriguez,
Yay.
Donald Gregory,
Yay.
January Farrell,
Yay.
Frankie Lax.
Yes.
All right, the meeting has been adjourned at 10:43. Talk to you, gentlemen and ladies. It's our next meeting, unless you
Thank
need me
y'all.
in between.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Appreciate
Everybody
everything.
have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.